All right, today we're diving into the story of one of the most, well, complicated figures of the 20th century, Chiang Kai-shek. His entire story is framed by this one massive question that probably haunted him his entire life. I mean, think about it. How do you manage to unite an entire nation, lead it through a world war, and then somehow still lose everything? It's a massive paradox. This was the guy who pulled China out of total chaos, who stood on the world stage next to Roosevelt and Churchill. And yet, he ended up presiding over one of the biggest political defeats in modern history. So yeah, how on earth did that happen? Okay, so to get our heads around this, we're going to break his journey down into 5 main parts. We'll start with how he unified a completely broken China, then look at the insane pressure of fighting a war on 2 fronts. From there, we'll see the shocking loss of the mainland, his, let's call it autocratic rebuilding in Taiwan, and finally, we're going to try to make sense of his really contested legacy. So first things first, let's go right back to the beginning, his incredible rise from the ashes of a fallen empire. You know, to really get what Chiang accomplished, you first have to picture the China he was dealing with. After the last dynasty fell, the country just shattered. It wasn't really a nation anymore. It was this chaotic mess of territories, each run by these powerful military governors, the warlords, and they were all fighting each other for a bigger piece of the pie. It was total mayhem. And that was the world Chiang Kai-shek decided he was going to conquer. And you know what? His rise to power was just stunningly fast. I mean, think about how quickly this all happened. In 1925, he takes over the Nationalist Party, the KMT. Just 1 year later, he kicks off the Northern Expedition, this huge military campaign to take down the warlords. And by 1928, get this, only 3 years after taking charge, he'd set up a new national government. For the first time in decades, a single person could actually claim to be the ruler of all of China. It was, honestly, a monumental achievement. Chiang Kai-shek, the Generalissimo, had basically done the impossible. But, and this is a big but, his grip on power was way more fragile than it looked. And that brings us to the challenge that would really define his entire career, and ultimately break his leadership. He had to fight 2 wars at the exact same time. So you had these 2 sides with completely different game plans. Chiang's nationalists, right, they're backed by the US, fighting a very conventional war against the Japanese army. And it was a brutal, all-consuming conflict that just drained them. But then you have Mao Zedong's communists. They were playing a different game entirely. They used guerrilla tactics, hiding out in the countryside, so while Chiang's best armies were getting hammered by Japan, Mao's forces were quietly building up their strength, winning over the peasants with promises of land, and just waiting for their moment. You know, this is one of history's great what-ifs, isn't it? The war with Japan just absolutely devastated Chiang's best troops and totally wrecked China's economy. So, was his eventual loss to the communists always in the cards? Or was it a direct result of those 8 long years of brutal foreign invasion? It's a tough question. So after World War II ends, this whole pressure cooker environment, combined with some really terrible military mistakes, well, it all led to a catastrophic collapse for the Nationalists. I mean, just look at that number, 287 million%. It's almost impossible to even wrap your head around. This wasn't just an economic crisis, it was the total meltdown of society. Your money was worthless. People's life savings just vanished overnight. The KMT government, already torn apart by war and corruption, completely lost its ability to govern. And just like that, the support of the people, gone. And this quote from historian Rana Minner really captures the human side of it. For the average person, the KMT wasn't a protector anymore. They were seen as this corrupt, predatory force that was just taking and taking. And that widespread feeling of betrayal, well, that became the perfect fertile ground for Mao's revolution to grow. The end, when it came, was shockingly fast. I mean, think about it. Just 4 years after standing with the Allied victors of World War II, Chiang Kai-shek had lost the Chinese Civil War. He, his government, and what was left of his army fled across the strait to the island of Taiwan, promising that one day they would be back. But this wasn't the end of his story, not by a long shot. It was actually the beginning of a very strange and very brutal new chapter, trying to build a nation in exile. See, to make absolutely sure he would never lose again, Chiang brought down an iron fist on Taiwan. This period, which became known as the White Terror, was almost 4 decades of martial law. Any hint of dissent was just ruthlessly crushed. Thousands were imprisoned, even executed, all under the banner of fighting communism and getting ready to retake the mainland. But here's where it gets complicated again. Another paradox. At the same time this brutal political repression was happening, his government was also putting in place really successful land reforms and economic policies. These are the policies that literally lead the groundwork for Taiwan's future prosperity, what people call the Taiwan miracle. So you have this military dictator who is also somehow building the foundation for a modern, thriving economy. How do you square that? So, how in the world do we make sense of this guy? A unifier who lost the nation he unified. A world leader who became a dictator on a small island. The contradictions are just staggering when you lay them all out. He unified China and then lost it. He led China as a major allied power in World War II. He also oversaw the brutal White Terror. He fostered the economic rise of Taiwan. And he did it all while ruling as an unelected president for life. There's just no single easy label that fits him. And that's really the question we're left with, isn't it? Was Chiang Kai-shek a failed hero? Someone who tried to save his country but was just overwhelmed by forces too big for any one person? Was he a necessary strongman whose harsh methods were the only way to build a modern state out of chaos? Or was he just a tragic figure, swept away by the massive tides of history, the Japanese invasion on one side and the communist revolution on the other? His legacy is still one of the great debates of modern history, and it's one that continues to echo today.